Hi and welcome to this Key Learning Initiative video. Today's topic is measurement, and we do conversions or rates using tables. Before we get going, please like and share this video if possible. Also, if you haven't already done, please subscribe to my channel so that you can see more and more content. So let's get going with today's video. When we're doing conversions or conversion tables, there are 3 steps that we need to follow. The first step, write the rate names and then the values for the rates. Step 2, if the first term is not 1, divide both sides of the rate by the first term so that you get the rate in the form 1 to something. Third step, if they have given you the first term in the rate, you multiply by the second term. Otherwise, you divide by the second term. And those are my steps. If you follow those, you shouldn't have any problem with conversion tables. But let's look at some examples, and we're going to be completing 4 in this video. Let's see the first one. Using the conversion table, calculate the following. And our first one is how many milliliters is 4 cups of sugar. Now if you look on the right hand side, we've got conversions used in cooking, and we've got 1 cup, 1 tablespoon and 1 teaspoon, and what they are in milliliters. Now you will always be given this table. The only thing that you do have to remember is that TBSP stands for tablespoon and TSP stands for teaspoon. But let's get going. Our first step, write the rate names and then the values for the rates. Now our question deals with milliliters and cups of sugar, and so we have to find cups and milliliters in our rate, and so we write it down. We're going cups and milliliters. Now we write down the actual values. So it's 1 cup is 250 milliliters. Step 2. If the first term is not 1, divide both sides of the rate by the first term to get the rate in the form 1 to something. So we look at our first one, and it's a number 1, so we don't have to worry about our second step. Step 3. If they have given you the first term in the rate, you multiply by the second term. Otherwise, you divide by the second term in the rate. So they want 4 cups of sugar, so it's 4. Now we're going from cups to milliliter. They've given us 4 cups, we want milliliters, so we're going from cups to milliliters, and so we times. And what do we times by? Well, it's 250 milliliters. Then that equals 1000 milliliters. That means that 4 cups of sugar is 1000 milliliters of sugar. Let's look at our second example. How many TBSP is 300 milliliters? Now remember, that's tablespoons. So step 1, write the rate names and then the values for those rates. So we're dealing with tablespoons and milliliters. So tablespoons, milliliters. What are my values for it? Well, 1 tablespoon is 15 milliliters. Step 2. If the first term is not 1, divide both sides of the rate by the first term to get the rate in the form 1 to something. Well, let's have a look. My first term, it's already 1. I don't have to do step 2, I move straight on to step 3. If they have given you the first term in the rate, you multiply by the second. Otherwise, you divide by the second term in the rate. So let's look at our question. They want 300 milliliters, and they want to know how many tablespoons that is. So they've given us 300. Now they've given us the milliliters and they want to know how many tablespoons. So we're going from milliliters to tablespoons, and so we divide. How much do we divide by? We divide by the 15. which is the second term in our ratio. Now, if you can work that out in your head, or you put it into your calculator and press equals, you'll get 20 tablespoons. So 300 milliliters is 20 tablespoons. Example 3, and you'll see we've got a different table on the right hand side. Baking powder, flour and sugar, milliliters to grams. Question 3. How many grams of baking powder is 35 milliliters? So we're doing baking powder and grams and milliliters. Step 1. Write the rate names and then the values for the rates. So we're dealing with milliliters and grams. Now the values for baking powder is 5 milliliters to 4 grams. Step 2. If the first term is not 1, divide both sides of the rate by the first term to get the rate in the form of 1 to something. So if we look at our first term, it's actually a 5. So what we do is we divide both sides by 5. 5 divided by 5 gives me 1, and 4 we then divide by 5 as well. Now if you put 4 divided by 5 in your calculator, you'll get 0,8 grams. And so 1 milliliter is 0,8 grams. Step 3. If they've given you the first term in the rate, you multiply by the second term. Otherwise, you divide by the second term in the rate. So, they've given us 35 milliliters and they want to know the number of grams. So they've given us the millimeters, they've given us it's 35 milliliters, and we're going from milliliters to grams, and so we multiply. How much do we multiply by? Our 0,8 that we've just calculated. We put that in our calculator, we press equals, and we get 28 grams. So 35 milliliters of baking powder is 28 grams. Question 4. How many milliliters of flour is 10 grams? Alright, again, we go through our 3 steps. Step 1. Write the rate names and then the values for the rates. So milliliters and grams, and it's flour. So milliliters and grams. What are my values? Well, it's 5 milliliters to 3 grams. Excellent. Step number 1. Step 2. If the first term is not 1, divide both sides of the rate by the first term to get the rate in the form of 1 to something. Let's have a look. Our first term is 5, so again we divide both sides by 5. 5 divided by 5 is just 1, and so we get 1 milliliter is 3 divided by 5. And again, if you put that in your calculator quickly, you'll see that it's 0,6 grams. Step 3. If they've given you the first term in the rate, you multiply by the second. Otherwise, you divide by the second term in the rate. Let's have a look. They've given us 10 grams of flour and they want milliliters of flour. So they've given us the second term and they want the first one, and therefore we divide. How much do we divide by? Our 0,6. We put that in our calculator and we get 16,67 milliliters. 16,67 milliliters is the same as 10 grams of flour. And there you have it. So thank you so much for watching this Key Learning Initiative video on measurement, where we're doing conversions or rates using tables. If you haven't already, please remember to subscribe to my channel, to like and share it with everybody so that more and more people can see this content. I hope these examples have been helpful.